Hello to all who are viewing this today. I'm going to be sharing with you my book, Trilogy of the Magi. It's about the three kings of Christmas lore. Now, when people come up to my table as I'm doing a book signing, one of the major questions that they will ask me at some point is, what made you want to write about the three kings? What made you do it? Of course, now these are the three kings who followed the star to Bethlehem, brought the gifts to the baby Jesus. This is truly an extraordinary story that I'm going to be sharing with you. And here's how it all began on a January morning as I was driving to my St. Louis public school. And I always want you to remember that it was a public school where I taught at. So it was a January morning, as I was just saying, and completely out of the blue came the idea for a book. I thought, wow, this is a great idea. My next thoughts were, it's the middle of the school year. There's absolutely no way that I could possibly begin to write a book in the middle of the year. Taught the gifted program. I needed all my brains to stay ahead of my students. I had two boys at home as well. So again, I thought, great idea, but. Now, 100%, I never ever thought of that book plot again until the end of the school year. 1 week to go, once more driving to that same public school, and once more, completely out of the blue, the very same plot came to me. This time a few more details to it, and now I had three thoughts. The first one, you're going to be spending the summer a lot differently than you thought because you're going to write this book. This is the second time in 4 months that this fabulous plot has come to you. You're going to do this. Second thought, you're going to have to buy another Bible. You can't use the family Bible for all the research you're going to have to do. Pages are too thin. You're going to be flipping back and forth between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You could ruin the family Bible, such as it is, and forget about putting a paper clip on those thin pages, right? So it simply became a given. I was going to buy another Bible, not a problem. Third thought, lots of research to do. If I'm going to write a book, it's going to be as accurate as I can possibly make it. So I've got Roman history to research, and I've got Jewish history to research, and whew, I better get started. And then all of a sudden I thought, I'm going to get a copy of that book, The Robe. That's R-O-B-E. It's Jesus' robe at the crucifixion that the soldiers were dicing for at the foot of the cross. So basically it's the story of the soldier who wins the dice game, who wins Jesus' robe. Now I knew it had been a book way back when. I could vaguely remember having seen the movie as a child. And actually at that time I thought it took place about 100 years after the crucifixion. But of course it took place, immediately. Now again, I'm from St. Louis, as I think I mentioned. And we have a pretty good library system, so I figured they could dig up a copy of that old book for me. I'd read it, return it, and that was going to start my research. And now I pulled into my St. Louis public school, found a note in each teacher's mailbox that said that the school library was cleaning house. End of the school year, freebies for teachers. But it was also going to be first come, first serve. And I thought, this is not going to do me any good at all because my prep period and lunchtime were not until 12:30 back to back. And I thought, all the good things are going to be gone by the time I arrive. My good friends, the other teachers, will have, gotten the good materials. And so I thought, well, and actually I was going to be super busy on my prep period that day as well, end of the school year, closing down the classroom, etc. So again, I thought, waste of time, forget about it. But at 12:35, just like the book ideas, oh, go to the library. Free is free after all, and books are books. There might be something there. Now, 3 tables were set up. Normally, I would have started at the first, probably like most of you out there, and instead moved across to table 3. Well, I moved straight forward to the middle table, to the right side edge of the middle table, where side by side lay both a paperback copy of the Bible and the most dilapidated copy of the book, The Robe, you could possibly imagine. If you got goosebumps, I have them myself as well. I thought to myself, wow, you must really want me to write this book. This is the second time in 4 months you gave me this fabulous plot. I did nothing about it. And just a few hours ago, I said if I only had another Bible and the book, The Robe, couldn't I make progress? And you have put them both in my hands. So now I can't procrastinate. I'm going to have to do it, and I did it. Now, the first book that I published was A King's Story, and it only took me 6 weeks to write because, again, what had come to me was that first chapter and the last chapter. Middle of it was a bit murky, But I will tell you that I would go to church. I would see something, a bulletin board maybe at a church, and it would just spur the plot along. For example, one time the sermon was about Capernaum, and I thought, wow, this is absolutely perfect for my plot. I've got to get home and finish writing here some more. So again, this was a king's story, the first book. This is the Easter book, and it's the third book of the trilogy. And how this came about was that over the years, people said to me, when are you going to write about the other two kings? Basically, my statement to them would be, I got nothing, meaning I got nothing. And then all of a sudden I realized all those people spurring me along, asking me when I was going to write about the other two kings was the impetus for me to write. And I will tell you that on the day that I decided that I was going to write the book, there were just extraordinary things that happened at my church, the readings, etc. The next day, I was driving along in the neighborhood about a mile from my house. I went past a church, not my denomination, not my church. There was a slogan outside, on the billboard, let's call it. And it said, "Wise men still seek him." If you look at my banner here, I tweaked that and I said, "Wise men and women still seek him," and it is the absolute truth. So I've always been a faith-filled person, but these happenings to me were absolutely beyond awesome. And with him on my side, well, I could do nothing less than write. Now, what I want to tell you is that you can buy Trilogy of the Magi as either a hardcover or a softcover book. I also have a flash drive. This is my reading of all three books. Put it into your laptop or desktop. I couldn't let somebody else do it because, well, I knew exactly how I wanted it to sound, and, I had to do it myself. So you can purchase the books through my website, and kathym.com. This is the QR code if you want to focus in on that, and you can order it there. I'll send a book to you, mail it to you. First of all, I'll sign it, of course. It's a beautiful gift to give to yourself or to others. Maybe it's a thank you gift, a birthday gift, an anniversary gift. Obviously, it's a Christmas book, but it's also a book for all year reading. Winter, spring, summer, fall, something's happening in one of the books. And of course, then the third book, A King's Story, that third book, Gaspar's Story, is an Easter book, and these several months after Easter. So as I said, it is an all year long read. So now let's move on here, as I'm going to share with you some of the absolutely stellar reactions of both my initial book, A King's Story, and now Trilogy of the Magi. Most of what I'm going to be sharing with you happened at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, but there's a beautiful story that I want to share that from Scott Air Force Base, where I was also doing a signing that's over in Illinois. So here's where I'm going to begin on this section of our being together here. Within a half an hour of each other, 3 people came by my table. 2 of them were men, 1 was a woman. They all used the very same word to describe my book. They all said that it was awesome. Now, that's a pretty awesome word for an author to hear about her work. I'm sure you would agree. Now, the woman's statement went something like this. "The last time I read your book was about 6 months ago. I've already got it packed away in my luggage. I'm going on vacation in a couple of weeks, and I want to read it while I'm on vacation." So I'm not sure which reading she's on at the moment, but that is what I have happening with A King's Story. Well, it happened with A King's Story, and then, of course, also with Trilogy, that people will reread my book, and sometimes maybe they'll just read their favorite one of the 3, but generally speaking, they reread all of them. So good value for your money when you think about it, to get a book that you're going to reread over and over again. So here's my Fort Leonard Wood stories, and awesome is another word to describe them. So the first book signing that I ever did was at Fort Leonard Wood. I was there for about a week. A man came by my table. It was on Wednesday, and he called out to the people who were at my table. He said, "Buy her book. It's great." Now, this was the first time anybody outside of my family and friends had ever said that the book was great. So, of course, I wanted to, let's say, reel him in, lasso him, let's talk more. So we did, and through the week we continued to talk. I said to him at one point, he was not in uniform that day, and I said, "I'd like to take our picture together." And he said, Well, I planned to do it on Sunday. And by the way, he was a staff sergeant. He had seen active duty in Afghanistan and Korea. And hi, Chris, wherever you might be at the moment, I hope you're going to see this. I have loved your statements and your generosity through the years. So what happened is that on Sunday, he came by my table, spick and span in his beautiful dress uniform. He had 3 medals on. So he came around, we took my picture, and then he came around at the front of my table, and very ceremoniously, he took off each of his 3 medals, and he presented them to me. And he said, well, first of all, my statement to him was, Chris, I can't accept these. You risked your life for them, for our country. By that time, I knew he had a young son, and I said, they belong to your son. And he said, no. He said, I want you to have them. He said, your book means so much to me. So I'm not a reader, but I couldn't put it down. So, of course, when, somebody wants to be that generous to you, you just have to accept, what they want to do for you. So, another Fort Leonard Wood story. When I returned 6 months later, because I was still teaching at the time, couldn't do too many book signings at that point for a King's Story. So I came back. A man came by my table. He said, I'm on my 7th reading of your book, and it means something different to me each time. As I said, I'm having the same thing happen with Trilogy of the Magi. The first time it happened, it was a woman, and her statement was that she said she was sad when it ended. And to myself, I thought, how can you be sad? It's the most glorious ending ever. And of course, it is the same ending of A King's Story. But she said her solution, she would reread it. And again, that is what I'm having happen, with Trilogy of the Magi. Another woman came on my table. She said, your book is such a page turner. She said, I always knew what was going to happen, and that's because in that 3rd book, King Gaspar is always just a little bit behind Jesus as he is going into Jerusalem in the Palm Sunday procession. And I tell you what, let's take a moment, let's talk about the 3 books specifically. So the first book in it is Melchior's. Melchior is a young man in Rome, Italy. I'm not sure you can read this or not, but he is, again, a young man in Rome, Italy. Herod is also there to be crowned the king of Judea, Perea, and Galilee by the Romans. Now, eventually, Melchior is going to begin a journey. It's going to take him to Bethlehem. He'll meet it with some fellow travelers along the way. So call that first story the traditional Christmas story, if you will. Balthazar's book is the 2nd book in it, the middle book. 20 years have passed by since they followed the star to Bethlehem. He's now been captured by Bedouin tribesmen under orders of Herod II. I was able to bring some of the women in the Bible into this middle book, in particularly giving Mary her due, her cousin Elizabeth, the prophetess Anna, for example. Now, towards the end of it, Balthazar endures a crisis of faith. But I don't want to ruin that plot for you as to why that happened or the aftermath to it. Now, the 3rd book is Gaspar's book, and again, that's the Easter book. And what happens is that he moves into Jerusalem in a slow-moving cavalcade of people that today we would call the Palm Sunday procession. And he hears stories of incredible events happening in the land. For example, there's a group, and they were talking about a man who was supposed to have fed 5,000 people from a few loaves and fish. Now, the person telling the story said he was in the crowd that very day and that it absolutely happened. On the other hand, there was another group, and they were talking about a magician who was said to have brought a man back to life. King Gaspar assessed that, and he thought to himself, there is absolutely no way on this earth that a magician could possibly bring a man back to life. Now, nobody says the name of Jesus as he's on these travels and hearing these various stories, and so it's really impossible for him to be able to associate that 33-year-old man whom he is seeking and whose birth he was at with these awesome, stellar, well, let's face it, miraculous events that he's hearing about. Now, this is the beginning of Gaspar's story. I did subtitle it A King's Story, which is, of course, the name of the original book that I wrote. And at the end of it, in my author's notes, I asked my readers, who's the real king in this book? Is it Gaspar? Or is it a higher king, of course? So those are the 3 books, and beautiful experience and read. So as I commented earlier, you can get a hardcover, you can get a soft cover, the audio, all through my website, kathym.com. We can mail the book to you. It's also available on Amazon, of course, and as an ebook on Kindle. So please do buy Trilogy of the Magi. It's a beautiful gift to give to yourself or to others who are special in your life. Maybe just a Thanksgiving gift for anything. Christmas gift, obviously. And again, it's an all-year-long read. Now let's check out some of the things that people are writing and saying in reviews of Trilogy of the Magi. So the U.S. Review is a very prestigious organization, as I'm sure some of you know, and they sent this to me. They posted it in the batch of 80 books in which mine was also being reviewed. They only recommended 23 to be bought and read. Mine was one of them. So amongst the many beautiful things that they said was that I paint a vast panorama that will grip readers who approach her work in the light of similar faith and historic curiosity. She paraphrases traditional biblical speech, making it more intelligible to readers, and she adds skeins of factual history to underpin her vivid images and speculations. The result is an engaging plot with sufficient connection to fact that will doubtless engender positive sharing and further profound thinking among a wide readership. I would love for you to be among that wide readership. So what are some other things people wrote? Well, Marna stated, you've written a richly descriptive, enlightening, and enjoyable book. Your take on the journey of the three kings, told in modern language, is such a clever way to present this age-old story. One wants to keep reading from start to finish. This was from MEW in St. Louis. This book was totally captivating. The characters are described so vividly that they seem to come alive. I found it hard to put the book down because I really liked each character and easily became intrigued and enthralled with their exciting adventures. I felt like I was part of Jesus' birth and life through them. I strongly recommend this book so you too can feel you have experienced Jesus' birth from being there too. And she put that in quotation marks with exclamation points. Here's MB's great comment. Trilogy of the Magi is a great read. The author has given us a look into the individual lives of Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. In doing this, they have become more humanized, and you are able to visualize and feel what they are going through at the time. Their stories merge together, and you will have a very enjoyable read. FYI, on more than one occasion, people have come up to my table who've read my book and make statements something like this. I always used to think of the three kings as just a unit, as one. And now through your books, I see them as individuals who had lives, past, present, and future, before they followed the star to Bethlehem. ICI wrote, I do not want to spoil the ending of the three Magi's separate stories, but it is powerful. The author encourages the reader to join in the revelation of the king. CW stated, the author's knowledge and powerful writing make this both an incredible and an enjoyable read. So the best thing about my sharing my book with you now and at book signings is that I don't have to do this. I get to do this. I'm blessed, and I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with my life at this time. Though actually at the moment I've got a brand new grandson, my very first one. I'm going to be doing some babysitting. But that's another part of my life. Well, God has apparently blessed my readers as well. When I return to book signings, people will come by and they literally feel impelled to stop and share their experiences in reading the book. Frequently they'll pass it along to family and friends. And many times they'll ask me if I would to take a picture with them after they've bought my book and read it. I'm reminded of the soldier who had given his mom my book for a Thanksgiving gift when he returned home. And she told him that if he ever saw me again, that he should thank me for her. And so he took a picture by my author poster, and that was going to be proof to him that he had done what his mom told him he ought to do. If anyone wants to help me to get A King's Story, the third book, made into a movie, please, please help me to do this. And as an FYI, I've actually written a preliminary movie script for it. Making all three books into a movie, well, that's okay with me, of course, as well. People will often say to me, the director of the Chosen TV series would absolutely love your book. My comment to them is something like, do you know Dallas Jenkins? And so if you know him, please put us in contact with each other. You can help me to take my stories of the three kings of Christmas lore to the next level and to share it with millions of readers and, of course, viewers as well. Again, my contact info is kathym.com. It's on the banner down there. I'll send you a signed copy of Trilogy of the Magi. And that's all we have for today. Thank you so very much for listening, and I know you're going to enjoy reading Trilogy of the Magi. Thanks again.